She was walking down the street, the sun high, the world buzzing with ordinary life. No threat, no warning, just a woman trying to live her day. And then in an instant, everything shifted. Strangers' eyes followed her with suspicion. Words she had never expected cut through the air like knives, leaving her breathless, questioning why she was being treated as though she didn't belong. Every step became heavier, every glance sharper, every moment attested her very right to exist in the space she called home. In that split second, what should have been a normal day became a vivid reminder of truth she had long tried to ignore. The color of her skin made her a target. Her hands shook as she reached her front door, heart pounding, unsure if she was safe in the place she had always called home. Friends and neighbors watched, but few intervened, their silence echoing louder than any accusation. She felt the weight of centuries in those moments. The inherited fear, the unspoken rules, the constant reminder that justice isn't always blind. And yet, something inside her refused to bend. How do you respond when the world seems to judge your very existence before it even knows your name? When a society built to protect you suddenly feels like the arena that seeks to challenge you at every turn. This isn't just a story about one incident. It's a reflection of a reality millions face every single day. What happened next would change your life forever and expose truths most would rather look away from. But what choice do you have when the system designed to shield you feels like it's stacked against you? It was a normal morning. Maya had woken early, brewed her coffee, and stepped out onto the quiet street she had walked 1,000 times before. Her neighborhood was familiar, a place she had always called home, filled with familiar faces. Kids playing, neighbors waving. She felt a sense of comfort in the routine, the rhythm of ordinary life. Work was busy, bills were steady, life felt manageable. Maya's steps were light, her thoughts on the day ahead. Meetings, errands, maybe a quick stop at the park. She smiled at the barista who knew her order by heart, nodded to the mail carrier, and waved to a neighbor tending their garden. Everything seemed normal, safe. Everything seemed ordinary. But beneath the surface of normality, tension lingered in ways she hadn't fully realized. Glances that lingered too long, conversations that paused as she approached, subtle reminders that, in some eyes, her presence was different, unusual, or even unwelcome. She had experienced microaggressions before, small, fleeting moments of judgment, but nothing that had ever escalated into real danger. She believed she was prepared for life's challenges. Maya didn't notice the car parked just ahead, engine humming, its occupant scanning the street with quiet intent. She didn't notice the whisper of judgment in the air that seemed to tighten with every step she took. Her neighborhood, her safe haven, was about to become the stage for something far more threatening than she could have imagined. The ordinary rhythm of her morning was about to be shattered, and what she was about to face would force her to confront not just the fear, but the deep, unspoken realities that many live with every day. Maya stepped onto the sidewalk, heart steady, yet a faint unease prickled at the back of her neck. The morning sun cast long shadows, but it couldn't hide the sudden scrutiny of a stranger's gaze. Across the street, a man lingered near a parked car, shifting uncomfortably, his eyes tracking her every move. It wasn't the first time she had felt the weight of someone's judgment, but today it felt heavier, more deliberate, almost predatory. She quickened her pace, telling herself it was paranoia, that the city always had curious onlookers. But as she passed the corner store, voices murmured behind her, soft, but sharp enough to make her flinch. A group of people stopped their conversation mid-laugh, glancing her way with subtle, pointed stares. She felt the familiar sting of being othered, small but undeniable, a reminder that even in her own neighborhood, acceptance was conditional. By the time she reached the park, the unease had escalated into tension that tightened her chest. Parents playing with their children paused to watch her, eyes flicking with suspicion. Her dog tugged at the leash, sensing the energy, and she clenched her jaw, determined not to give in to fear. Then came the first words, sharp and cutting, from someone she didn't know. "Why are you even here?" Maya froze, trying to gather her composure. She knew this wasn't about her actions. It was about who she was, the color of her skin, and the assumptions that came with it. She moved past, refusing to engage, hoping the moment would pass. But it didn't. A man in a uniform jacket stepped into her path at the park entrance, blocking her way, arms folded, expression unreadable but heavy with judgment. Every instinct screamed caution. Her pulse quickened as whispers became pointed comments, subtle threats cloaked in civility. People who would normally smile or nod at a passing neighbor now avoided her eyes entirely or sneered with thinly veiled disdain. She felt exposed, hypervisible, each step a negotiation with fear. What should have been a short walk turned into a gauntlet. Every glance and word a reminder that she was seen as different, unwelcome. The car from earlier had moved closer, doors unlocked, engine still running, the occupants watching with quiet intent. Maya's steps faltered. She reached for her phone instinctively, fingers trembling, unsure whether to call for help or just continue forward. The tension was suffocating, the normal rhythm of life completely disrupted. Every passerby felt like a potential threat, every glance a judgment. By the time she neared her apartment building, it was clear this wasn't random. Someone had followed her. Someone had decided she didn't belong, and the quiet injustice of it pressed down on her chest like a weight she couldn't shake. Every familiar landmark, every street sign, every echo of footsteps behind her reminded her that safety was conditional. It wasn't just discomfort. It was intimidation, a deliberate exercise of power rooted in prejudice. Her hands shook as she fumbled with her keys, the adrenaline making her breath come fast and shallow. The door was just within reach, but so was a moment that would force her to confront more than just fear. She would have confronted the raw, unfiltered reality of racism and the choices people make when they decide someone doesn't belong. Every step inside was a relief, but the danger hadn't passed. What awaited behind her apartment door, the confrontation she hadn't seen coming, would challenge not just her safety, but her very sense of dignity. The moment Maya stepped inside her apartment, the door barely latched behind her. The tension snapped like a live wire. She hadn't even had time to catch her breath before there was a knock, a sharp, insistent pounding at her door. Her stomach twisted, and her pulse thundered in her ears. The sound wasn't casual. It carried authority, accusation, and menace. She froze, hands trembling, heart hammering. She looked through the peephole. Outside, a group of men stood, their expressions unreadable but their presence oppressive. The air felt thick, as if it had hardened into something she couldn't push through. One step closer, his eyes locked on her face, unblinking, judging, assuming she was guilty of some unspoken wrong simply because of the skin she was born in. Fear, raw and sharp, cut through her. Every instinct screamed retreat, but escape wasn't an option. They had already cornered her in the one place she thought she could be safe. Her mind raced. She remembered the stories she'd heard, the countless headlines about people like her, about women like her, whose ordinary days ended in humiliation, violence, or worse. And now she was living it. Every breath she took felt heavy, loaded with the injustice she had tried to ignore, the hatred she had tried to rationalize. Every step she had taken that morning, every glance she had dismissed as paranoia, led her here, to a moment that demanded courage she hadn't known she had. The pounding continued, louder now. She could hear whispers, assumptions passed between the men outside, accusations thinly veiled beneath civility. Maya backed toward her living room, scanning desperately for her phone, for anything that could document what she was experiencing, anything that could serve as proof that she had done nothing wrong. Her hands shook as she dialed, her fingers fumbling over the screen. The line connected, and yet, in that split second, the men's attention snapped toward her. It was suffocating, the sense that her mere existence had provoked this. The walls of her home, the walls she had always considered sanctuary, felt like they were closing in, as if the very space meant to protect her had betrayed her. Her chest ached with a mix of fear and righteous anger. The injustice wasn't subtle anymore. It was blatant, unyielding, and terrifying. She realized, in a sharp and bitter clarity, that this wasn't about her actions at all. This was about who she was, and the world's refusal to see her humanity. Then came the turning point. A neighbor's voice called from outside, strong and firm, cutting through the suffocating tension. Someone else's presence, a witness, and a reminder that she was not invisible. It sparked something inside her, a flash of defiance, a surge of strength she hadn't realized she carried. She stood taller, breathed deeper, and recorded everything. The faces, the voices, the fear, the unfiltered truth. Maya knew this moment could define her life, could shatter her sense of safety, but it could also expose the very system that tried to render her powerless. Every second was electric, teetering on the edge between fear and survival, invisibility and exposure. And in that charged silence, she realized she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for the recognition of all those who had been made to feel less than human. Maya finally closed her door, locking it behind her with hands still trembling, her body tense in the hours of fear and confrontation. The pounding, the whispers, the judgment, all of it had left scars, invisible but undeniable. She sank onto her couch, breathing heavy, letting the weight of the morning settle. Relief mingled with exhaustion, but beneath it, a quiet anger burned, a deep, unrelenting awareness that what she had faced was far from an isolated incident. It was a reflection of a world where her very presence could provoke suspicion, a place where ordinary moments could become battlegrounds. As the adrenaline faded, the reality set in. Maya realized she had survived, but she had been forced to navigate a maze of prejudice, assumptions, and fear that others never had considered. The incident had shaken her sense of safety, but also awakened something stronger, a refusal to be silenced, a determination to document, to speak out, and to make the world see what too many try to ignore. She wasn't just a victim. She was a witness, a storyteller, a person confronting an uncomfortable truth that millions endure daily. Her phone buzzed with messages of support from friends and neighbors who had seen what happened. Some offered comfort, others outrage, all validating her experience. But it wasn't just personal. Maya knew the moment she recorded, the moment she refused to let the fear win. She was capturing more than a single act of injustice. She was capturing the patterns of systemic bias, the quiet terror that shadows people based on the color of their skin. In the days that followed, Maya reflected on what had happened and what it meant for her and for everyone who lived under the constant gaze of judgment. She realized that moments like hers are often dismissed, minimized, or erased, yet they speak volumes about the persistent, subtle, and sometimes overt forms of racism embedded in society. She understood that change begins with awareness, with telling the story that so many are afraid or unwilling to hear. Her experience became a mirror, reflecting not just the cruelty she faced, but the resilience, courage, and humanity that can't be taken away. Maya's life returned to a semblance of normalcy, but it was forever altered. Every glance, every interaction carried the echo of what happened, a reminder of the vigilance required to navigate a world that isn't always fair. Yet there was hope, too, a reminder that exposure leads to accountability, that courage inspires others, and that one story, one voice can chip away at the walls of prejudice. And as she looked out her window at the street she once walked without a second thought, she couldn't help but ask herself, and all of us, a question that hung heavy in the air. How many more ordinary mornings must be shattered before the world truly sees the reality of those who live under the shadow of bias every single day? How many more moments, like hers, must occur before change is no longer optional but necessary? Because the truth is clear. Silence protects no one. Speaking out, witnessing, and demanding justice is the first step. The question now is, what will you do when the next story unfolds in your own neighborhood?